Are you there? Are we connected? Excellent. Truly excellent. Now we may begin. Hello, chat. This is Theory Channel now, I guess. It's been
over for months
since Deltarune Chapters 3 and 4 came out, and I haven't really stopped thinking about it since. His fellow channel members, Zach and Noah, didn't finish the chapters until very recently, and we have been talking about it a whole lot, and oh boy, do we have thoughts.
As the resident Undertale and Deltarune lore expert here at Cinnamon Gaming, it's actually been really refreshing to talk about the game with people who aren't brain-rotted by and
hyperlink block.
And seeing someone without encyclopedic knowledge of spammed and sweepstakes and fun values try to unravel this game has been very, very interesting. We've come up with a lot of theories through independent reasoning. Some already exist as popular theories, some already exist as unpopular theories, but only one thing that we've come up with made me stop and go, holy crap, we actually solved the game. While still in the middle of Chapter 4, Zach started throwing his crack theories at me on Discord. He made a suggestion that he claimed was a wild shot in the dark. What if Gaster made the Dark Worlds during Undertale as a way for the monsters to escape the underground? To his confusion, I responded by shouting a line he had not yet heard. My Deltarune. In order to understand this epiphany, we need to establish something first. Dr. W.D. Gaster was always made for Deltarune, but he's a character from Undertale, both in the universe of the games and in real life. I don't think the Gaster we see in Deltarune is an alternate reality version of the same character from Undertale, like we see for a character such as Toriel or Alphys. I think he is the same exact entity in both games. And he's not the only one. Chapter 4 gives us some pretty compelling evidence that the same is true for Sans. So if this is the case, and we can accept that Gaster is from Undertale due to the information we find out about him from his followers in Undertale, then I think the answer to who he is and what he wants within Deltarune actually lies in Undertale. So what do we know about Gaster in Undertale? Well, he was the former royal scientist before he fell into his creation. The chief goal of the royal scientist is to find a way for the monsters to escape the underground. They do other things too, but that's their main goal. We also know from entry 17 that he was experimenting with darker darkness, which is exactly what Deltarune describes the Dark Worlds as. It's likely that Gaster is shattered across time and space by this dark world that he creates. But the question is, why did he create this dark world in the first place? Well, I think that answer also lies in Undertale. More specifically, in Undertale's version of the Deltarune prophecy. As Gerson Undertale explains, This is the Deltarune that Gaster would know, the prophecy that an angel would come and free the underground. A prophecy telling him to do exactly what he is already working to do. A prophecy where we are already given two separate interpretations. But who's to say that they're the only interpretations? I believe that Gaster created the Dark Worlds, maybe even the entire world of Deltarune the game, as a way to help the monsters escape the underground. He created his own interpretation of the prophecy, where he is the angel that frees his people. He created a heaven for them to ascend to. This survey program, this grand experiment, is his Deltarune in every possible literal sense. Gerson in Deltarune tells us that stories can be rewritten. After all, Dragon Blazers is just Lord of the Hammers, which is just the prophecy. Why can't we take it a step further and say that the Deltarune game prophecy is the same as Undertale's Deltarune prophecy? After all, banishing an angel's heaven, if you're willing to squint at it through the lens of parable, that's kind of what happens when we defeat Asriel and the true pacifist ending. This revelation immediately worked so well for me, because not only does it tie up the loose ends of and connections to Undertale, but it also fits perfectly with the narrative themes in Deltarune. Gaster never really fit in Undertale, intentionally, because he didn't fit with the narrative themes of mercy and compassion and choosing to do the right thing even when it's super hard. However, he does fit perfectly with Deltarune's themes of escapist fantasy, interpretation of fiction, and freedom of choice. He literally creates a world of fiction as an escape route and presumably gets trapped in his own fantasy. That's pretty on the nose and makes him a perfect antagonist in Deltarune. Now, what does all this mean for Deltarune moving forward into the future? Frankly, I don't know. It does open the avenues to a lot of new theories and reinterpretations of evidence we already have. Maybe the U2 in Entry 17 could be Susie and Noelle, the two people we know can break the rules of Deltarune, and now thanks to the 10th anniversary stream, both of which have appeared in or been mentioned in Undertale. Is the light world we see in Deltarune a world where Gaster has already created his perfect heaven and now we have to banish it? Is banishing the Angel's Heaven replacing the Deltarune world with the Undertale world, or something like that? Who knows, honestly, at this point. We can't use this information to concretely answer anything about the game. However, understanding Gaster's motivations, as they have been pretty clearly laid out now, will help us guess about the future a lot better. All that being said, I do still have a couple little mini theories to throw at you. I guess I'll start by exploring what this could mean for Deltarune's secondary theme of determinism versus free will. I think the world of Deltarune that Gaster has created is a world without free will. It's marching along a predetermined path, as we see with the hospital beads. That's very fitting for Gaster because he himself has no freedom. He's trapped, stuck. At the end of Chapter 4, he tells us he's waiting for his one ending. He's fascinated by our attempts at freedom, but that's because he knows there is no freedom. There is one ending. This is where Friend comes in. I believe that Gaster and Friend are dual antagonists in this game, in much the same way that Asriel and Kara are in Undertale, where Gaster represents resigned fatalism, Friend represents morbid curiosity. Our best evidence that they are opposing forces lies in Chapter 3, specifically with the Knight and Tenno. When we try to break our fate by fighting the Knight, Gaster is fascinated by this. But I don't think this is because he's curious to see what will happen like most people think. I think it's because he's trying to teach us a lesson. He knows we can't win this fight. No matter what happens, no matter if you no-hit it, no matter if you get the Shadow Crystal, this still ends in a scripted loss. I also think it's very notable that it's the only secret boss, the only Shadow Crystal boss, that does not feature the freedom motif. Even Mike has it in Chapter 4. So what about Spamton? We've thought for so long, because of how long it took for Chapter 3 to come out, that Gaster was the one giving out the Shadow Crystals and driving the secret bosses mad. Our best evidence for this was the garbage noise phone call that Spamton received in Chapter 2. However, Chapter 3, Tenna gives us a lot more context about the timing and circumstances of that phone call. That call comes right as Spamton is about to reveal the source of his freedom to Tenna. Interesting, don't you think? This phone call is the exact moment where Spamton's life starts to fall apart. It is showing us Gaster contacting him, but I think we're being shown the exact moment where Gaster intervenes to cut off Spamton's access to Friend, or more specifically Mike, as the song Big Shot, though it's very hard to hear, has a line that's basically like, "Please Mike, answer the phone," meaning Mike used to answer the phone, but he doesn't anymore. We also see in Chapter 4 that Friend is very intrinsically tied with Mike, or something pretending to be Mike. But why would Gaster do that? Why step in now? Well, it's quite simple, actually, if you really think about it. Friend can have Jevil, he can have Spamton, he can even have Gerson. These are forgotten nobodies, to some extent, that play no significance to the broader narrative of Deltarune. But Tenna? That's a chapter boss. He's a necessary cog in this great wheel that is the survey program. Friend can't have him. But from Friend's perspective, he's the perfect target. He's a forgotten nobody, past his prime, longing for freedom, longing to make it big. Even after he loses Spamton, he keeps trying to get his claws in Tenna. He takes on the role of Friend to some extent, as we see in Chapter 4. Tenna plays a huge part in the secret route of Chapter 3, still talking about wanting that freedom, even though he can't get it. And eventually, at the end of the chapter, seeing no other alternative, Gaster has the knight just kill him. I mean, obviously he doesn't stay dead, but he steps in to prevent things from going off the rails. The knight's presence in that scene is essentially fast-forwarding the narrative back on track. But harassing Tenna isn't the only thing that Friend does to usurp Gaster's Deltarune in Chapter 3. It also goes out of its way to give us an instruction manual on how to access the weird route through the mantle minigame, which it itself is a part of at several moments. It even gives us the tools we need to take the Shadow Crystal from the Knight. But most importantly, it makes sure we are very aware of the only tool we know of at the moment by which we can rewrite the story of Deltarune, the other angel, Noah Holiday. Another aspect of this freedom versus determinism debate in Undertale is the wisdom we get from Gerson in Chapter 4. He shows us the right way to rewrite the story, Susie's way. As we've seen throughout the game, Susie also seems to have the ability to overwrite the possibilities of Deltarune in certain ways. That leaves us now with 3 people who can determine the narrative of Deltarune: Gaster, Noelle, and Susie. Our choices might not matter, but our subtle voice of manipulation might just change their choices. Hey, what about the Gaster followers from Undertale? Do those mean anything in Deltarune? Well, there is the one, the Clam Girl in Undertale, who seems to drop a teaser for Deltarune right before the game would release. But there's also one other, which I find very, very interesting. This thing. I don't like it. This weird dude is notably the only goner from Undertale to not have a non-goner counterpart. However, He does in Deltarune. Pyramid Head here tells us all about the cool books upstairs in the library, while conveniently blocking us from going upstairs into the library. He does move a little bit in later chapters to let us read one book at a time, but he's still blocking us from learning the full context of whatever it is this game is trying to tell us about its version of the human soul. Another strange thing is that after Chapter 1, every single line of dialogue he has given us has just been a remix of that original line from Chapter 1 with the words shuffled around to result in a new meaning. But a bit in that one for later. But the library isn't the only place we see this Phineas-looking Sprunkle. In Chapter 4, he's back, blocking our path once again, but this time in a much more mysterious place. This time, he's blocking us from talking with Onion like we had promised them that we would do previously. And he gives us my favorite remix of his original line, don't wait, especially the don't. He really does not want us to find out what Onion's secret song in the deep is, which of course makes us wonder, why not? What's so important about this song? If this thing is still Gaster follower adjacent, that means that Gaster himself doesn't want us hearing this song. But of course, Onion isn't the only person who does hear this song, are they? At the end of Chapter 4, we can sit by the lake, and someone else tells us they hear something in the water. Susie. A song drifting across the lake that she can hear, but we can't. Now that's an interesting piece of evidence to me. Combine the fact that Susie can hear this song with the fact that we can't, and Gaster doesn't want us to, and I think I have a pretty good guess at what that song is. I think it goes a little something like this. One last thing. Deltarune only has one ending, right? That's what we were told, at least until Chapter 2, when there was a mysterious little question mark added to the Steam description. Conveniently at the exact same time that we learned about the weird route. Of course, ever since then, we've wondered, what does that mean? And with this context, are we going to usurp Gaster's Deltarune? He seems very in control at the moment. Well, I think I know the answer, and to find it, we just have to look at exactly the evidence we've already been looking at, namely the Deltarune prophecy from Undertale and what Gerson has to say about it in both that game and this game. Stories can not only be rewritten, they can be reinterpreted. The prophecy is Lord of the Hammer is Deltarune, but none of those things are actually the same, just like in Undertale. The true pacifist ending and the genocide ending are technically both fulfilling the letter of the prophecy, but they are very, very different endings. I think something similar to that is exactly what's going on in Deltarune. There are in fact going to be multiple endings, but each ending is going to fulfill the prophecy line by line in its own annoyingly technical way. The angel is multiple choice, and so is their heaven. The prophecy can't be broken, and it can't technically be rewritten, but it can be reinterpreted in such a way to result in the most favorable outcome. Maybe that's what the deal with Chris losing an arm is. Maybe the original prophecy says they have to die, but it's phrased in such a way that we can circumvent it by just making them lose their arm instead. The point is that all these endings will technically be one ending if you're willing to squint at it and do some mental gymnastics. Now there's a major problem with trying to predict the ending of Deltarune. It has a very reliable source. It was revealed in a dream. Deltarune and Undertale only exist because of this fever dream that Toby Fox had of this weird ending to a video game that really stuck with him. Everything these games are has been made working backwards from that one ending, which is why it seems like he's so insistent that Deltarune only has one ending. So if this one ending is so important, how could there be multiple? It could be a couple things. It could be a meta commentary on fan interpretations or something like that. It does kind of seem like that might be a possibility with what Gerson said in Chapter 4. But I think it's actually a lot more simple than that. I think multiple endings that are actually the same ending is the exact dream ending that Toby Fox had all those years ago. It's exactly the kind of bespoke nonsense that my brain would come up with in a dream, and then I'd wake up a day later and be like, wait, that didn't make any sense, but yet the idea would stick with me anyway, and I would find a way to make it work for some kind of other creative project. And I know that's a weak defense, but still, with the evidence we have, with the narrative we have, with the themes we have, that is the most satisfying conclusion I can come to as to why there would be a question mark after one ending. How can we both have one ending and not have one ending? We can have them be all interpretations of the same prophecy. And even though all roads lead to the prophecy being fulfilled, I actually think it turns into a fun gameplay puzzle as well. We have to figure out how to circumvent the prophecy in exactly the right ways to result in the most desirable outcome. It's like outsmarting a genie or something like that. Sorry, that's a weird line to end on, but I'm just out of things to say now. If you're looking for more Deltarune content on this channel, it doesn't exist. But don't worry, working on fixing that. This isn't the only theory we came up with. We have another theory, which is actually something that people consider a dead theory after Chapter 3, that I'm going to revive with Eldritch Means. And we have a big friend extravaganza blowout that will take me like 3 months to finish, because there's too much with that character, if it even is a character. Now, is this going to become a full-time theory channel? No, absolutely not. However, again, we do still have some Deltarune videos planned. We have a couple Five Nights at Freddy's videos planned. One of them is very fun. I really look forward to doing that one. So if you like general indie game theorizing stuff, there will be things on this channel for you. However, I have a feeling it probably won't be that long before we're back to regularly scheduled programming of no scheduled programming and occasionally just uploading a video of a bug on a sidewalk. So stick around if you like bugs and cheese too, I guess. Make like, McComic, McScribe for more content on a basis of time.